Welcome to Learning with Lorrie, where I am sharing what I'm learning about history, the Bible, religion, church, God, Jesus, the devil, demons, giants, dragons, everything that I am learning as I walk on my path of becoming closer to my Creator, God, my Father, God. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I think there are probably a lot of people like me out there in the world who I don't come from a religious background. I have never studied theology. I've I've probably been to church maybe a couple dozen times in my life, and yeah, so there you go. However, I did have grandparents when I was young, and they were Baptist Christian. So I was exposed a little bit. You know, I went to Bible camp when I was in my preteens. We used to go spend a week with my grandparents in the summertime, and we would go to church with them while we were there. And when I was a teenager, a young teenager, I was involved in a church youth group. But, I was just kind of lost because they all knew their Bible and they all studied their Bible. And I'm not even sure if we had a Bible in my house when we were growing up. We did have a Book of Mormon because I had on the other side a grandmother who was Mormon, who for several years sent the Mormon missionaries around to our house with a Book of Mormon for my father. And after he yelled at them the second or third year in a row, they, contacted her and said, look, we're not going to go back there and harass this man who obviously doesn't want to hear from us. So that was kind of what my religious experience was like. And then my life experience, well, so when I was 14 or 15 years old, I started to rebel big time. My father had gotten remarried. I did not like his new wife. I met some friends who maybe I shouldn't have hung out with so much. I started smoking. I started smoking pot. I started drinking alcohol. And shortly after that, my father, whom I had lived with pretty much all my life, sent me to live with my mother because at 14 years old, I knew better than him what was good for me. And so off he sent me to go live with my mother, whom I love dearly. And as you know, still lives with me to this day. We've been living together again. She moved in with my husband and I. It'll be 10 years ago this year. So anyway, so I don't have a religious background, but I did start to rebel at an early age. And my rebellion got worse. I was a flat out cocaine addict by the time I was, probably 24, 25. I got really addicted. Like I have smoked marijuana since I was 14 and actually still do to this day. But I got into a lot of hard drugs, never anything that required a needle to inject because I don't like needles. But all kinds of things that you would put up your nose, or pills that you would take, or edibles like mushrooms, things like that. I tried it all. LSD was probably my first addiction. Would have been LSD, probably, that was chemical. And yeah, so that spiraled. Of course, I didn't know it at that time, and I didn't think about it at that time. I started working in a bar when I was 17, which in Alberta, the legal age was 18. So I lied about my age and got my job in my first bar. And for the next 20 years, I was a bartender and a growing addict working in multiple different bars in multiple different cities in two different countries. I grew up in Alberta, but I moved from there to, I think I went to Oregon, and then I went back to Alberta, and then I went to BC, and then I went back to Alberta, and then I went down to Washington, and then Oregon again, and then down to California, and then back to Oregon, and now back in British Columbia. I stopped working in bars 22 years ago and have been clean going just over 23 years now. Clean of, like I said, I still use cannabis in a variety of different forms, but I don't consider that to be a hard drug. I think that the benefits of cannabis outweigh the negative effects of cannabis, whereas I can't say that for any of the other drugs that I did. So yeah, there's that story. Rock bottom, decided it was time to quit. And my last day as, well, I guess I'm still classified as a junkie because once a junkie, always a junkie. But my last day using any hard drugs was December 30th, 1999. At that point, when I reached the bottom of where I was willing to go anyway. I guess for every person, rock bottom is different. But for me, my rock bottom was, yeah, that's when it happened. And when it happened, I remembered my grandparents and I remembered my relationship with God. And I started talking to him again. And that gave me great strength and great courage to move forward in my life, and to change it completely into what it is today, which is what I dreamed I could have back then. And I know that that's God working in my life. So, in my talks with God that go on in my head, I often ask him questions. And one of the questions that I started asking a little over a year ago was, how can I be closer to you and how can I know more about you? And two things kept coming back into mind. One of them was go to church, and the other one was read your Bible. I have a lot against church, and we'll go into that. It'll be one of this series, but yeah, that church wasn't really an option for me, but I could read my Bible. I could get a Bible and I could read it. And so I started reading the Bible, and then I felt like that wasn't enough. I felt like it doesn't tell the whole story. There are allusions to things in the Bible in places that are never ever mentioned anywhere else. And there's been a lot of things that have happened in 2,300 years since Christ was around. And there's been a lot of corruption, and there's been, whether it was intentional or not, things have been corrupted and changed. And I'd like to dig into that kind of stuff. I'm really interested in the history of religion and like, where do our beliefs even come from? Why do we believe what we believe? And what's true and what's not true. I have a lot of questions that I want answered. Like, when did Lucifer fall? Why did God create women 2 times in the Bible? Are there missing parts of the Bible? Are there stories that are missing from the Bible that we're not seeing? Are we still bound by Old Testament laws? Is the Trinity real or pagan? What about Christmas? What about Easter? What about the sinner's prayer? Have you ever heard about that? So many questions that I have. And as I started digging into them, I thought there's probably a lot of people out there who are like me, who maybe don't know this stuff and don't understand this stuff, or who maybe were brought up in a certain religious group, and so they've been indoctrinated into that form of worship and those beliefs without ever really questioning it or looking into the history of it. They've just accepted it because that's what they know, or what they've what they've been told. And so when I started to and then I met a friend, and we started studying the Bible. Well, we were supposed to study the Bible together. I won't mention what denomination that she is with, but they do provide a lot of their own written material that's supposed to supplement the Bible, and you're not really supposed to read the Bible without this supplementary material. Well, I didn't want to learn about that organization's um, I didn't want to learn about what they had to say about the Bible. I wanted to learn what the Bible had to say about the Bible. And so her and I don't study together anymore, but she has provided me with some really good information and some really good questions answered, or at least places to look into answering the questions. So anyway, that's kind of who I am and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm going to aim to have a weekly podcast, but I don't know what all is going to go into these. Like, some subjects are deeper than other subjects when you start getting into them. And I know I don't want to take too much time, 15 to 20 minutes per podcast, and that's going to be it. But if you have other questions other than the ones that I mentioned, you can certainly leave them in the comments. But I'm going to tell you, I am not a Bible expert. I have read the Bible, but never really with any understanding, and never really with a goal to gain understanding of what was going on in those people's lives, and what in the Bible is parable, and what is symbolism, and there's people talk a lot about symbolism in the Bible, but I like to think that it's a little more straightforward than that. And I also think that there are other scriptural texts and even unscriptural texts that provide a lot of information into why the church is what it is today, and how religion has gotten so off track. And I know that some people aren't going to like what I'm learning, but it is a very deep subject, and there are a lot of opinions on it. And so I am not going to try to change anybody's opinion on what they think or what they believe. I'm just going to tell you what I'm learning and my understanding of it. And I welcome dialogue back and forth if you find that I am looking at something the wrong way, or you feel that I'm interpreting something incorrectly. I'm willing, but keep everything civil. If you're not civil, I won't even respond. I will just delete your comment and probably block you from further podcasts, because civil conversation is one thing, and I love learning with and from other people, but nastiness is just not necessary. So let's not have any. But anyway, I'm going to aim to be putting something out every Thursday. I haven't quite decided. Well, I think I have decided yet. I think the place to start at is, where did religion come from? And so that's going to be my very first podcast, which will come out. I'm going to aim for next week. And if you have any comments or any other questions that you want to point out, or any suggestions on how to make this a better podcast, I am open and willing and ready to listen to your suggestions. And I'm going to say goodbye for now. Take very good care of yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye now.